Leo wasn't a remarkable boy. In fact, he was normal. More than normal, he was average. He was a sweet young man who loved sunflowers and valued hard work. He had dirty blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and was rather pale. Again, nothing noteworthy about him, and his life was a perfect reflection of this. A perfect reflection. His mother had always been rather on edge. She was ashamed of their living situation. She would go into fits about how they never seemed to have enough of anything, while Leo's father insisted they had just enough. But to Leo's mother, enough wasn't good enough. She would ask what would happen if her husband died. Where would she be then? She'd scream about how Leo was as weak as they came. How would they survive? Leo would sit in silence as he listened to his mother's cries, a consistent argument that never seemed to die, and once the taxes started, it only got worse. These large men and women, some born of the dragon gods and goddesses, others a mix of the said deities, they would come to the farmlands and ask for all the farmers in the area to pay a sort of protection fee, a new tax on top of the already existing one. This protection fee had been recently created due to the many attacks on the land from other opposing lands and kingdoms. At this time, it was mostly the lupus tribes. Back then, humans were a more closed-off species. They refused to interact with other kingdoms and preferred to keep mixing races between just dragons and humans. This was also a time when humans and dragons were much closer, as was the case for all kingdoms when it came to dragon relations. In any case, there was already a tax that the farmers needed to pay, and many of them, much like Leo's family, could barely get by. And now with this new fee, Leo's parents were scared for their lives, because if they didn't pay, there was no guarantee that they would be safe from the werewolf tribes. Leo, however, had hope. He wasn't hugely religious, but he always had been interested in the art of the cleric. A few would sometimes stop by his own village for trades, and when they did, he was inspired to start teaching himself. So, like all clerics, he chose a dragon to summon and commune with to begin his studies, and in this time of need, he prayed to this very same dragon for guidance and help. Her name was Luminous. Leo would ask every day for safety when his parents couldn't pay. He prayed for himself to grow stronger to help his family. He prayed when his parents fought through the night and day. He prayed the moment he felt himself obtaining a fever, but he didn't tell his parents about this. Leo continued to help with the farm, the crops, the sheep, and as he would lay under a tree and watch his flock, he'd bring out a small book of cleric spells and history. He loved to read, but the added determination to aid his family also drove his desires to learn magic. His prayers to Luminous had seemed to be working. He didn't feel as fatigued as he normally did after he was done with a long day of work, and for the most part, his family seemed fine as well. His mother would still complain, and he would stay up late at night hearing her cry, his heart aching to do something for her, but his life didn't change, at least not for a few more years. One day, when Leo was around 17, something did change. The guards that would come by were starting to get more determined when it came to money. Even when they couldn't pay, the guards would start to insist that they could, and that they were hiding the money from them. Leo had tried, along with his parents, to explain that they just couldn't afford the protection fee on top of the taxes for the animals, farmland, and their houses. But the guards wouldn't listen, nor would they leave. One had taken his mother's hair in his hand and slammed her head against the wall, pushing her head and her body against it. Despite everything his mother had ever said to him, or about him, his father jumped at the larger man and screamed at him to let his wife go. Leo had never seen his father so angry, or his mother so scared. She had never looked so small, so helpless. The other guards there took Leo's dad and ran their sword through his leg, telling him to remember his place. Leo dropped to the floor shaking, his body frightened, his eyes filling with tears. Once the guard let go of his father, he rushed over to him and tried to help stop the bleeding. He tried to help, but Leo wasn't strong enough yet. His body couldn't hold the magic needed to heal the wound. He couldn't do anything. At the sound of his mother's scream, he turned to see the larger guard gripping her throat while he felt up her body. Leo's father yelled at them to stop. "Marcy, stop! Let her go!" bellowed his father's voice. But this only resulted in his father getting kicked in his injured leg. A scream of pain erupted from the farmer, and he fell to the ground. "Dad!" Leo was panicked now. He held his father in his arms and looked up at the guards. His vision was blurry from tears, and for a moment it was almost like he wasn't even there. The road around him stopped. Everything went still. It was only him. His father's body disappeared from his arms. His mother and the guards vanished. It was just him. He was weak. He was powerless. He was short. His frame was small. He was nothing. He couldn't do anything.
"Do you want to be strong?"
The voice was high-pitched and raspy. It sounded stern but amused at the same time, curious to know his thoughts on the offer. What? Leo was bewildered and confused. What did this voice mean? It didn't bring him comfort, but it didn't radiate fear either. This seemed more like a salesman trying to get him to purchase a product, not really a solid side, just trying to live life and get by.
"Your father will die, and your mother will be raped. Do you want to be strong?"
His parents. The sales pitch seemed good. Yes. Leo came to. His father was unconscious in his arms, and his mother was on the floor crying. The guards were gone. Leo felt a strange power fill up his insides. His fingers felt tingly. He slowly got up, and with his father in his arms, walked to his mother. He kneeled down beside her, and once she saw her husband's lifeless body, she cried harder. "Nicholas!" Her voice was heartbroken and full of regret. She gently cupped his cheek as she held some of her torn-up dress to her chest. Her sad, defeated eyes looked up into Leo's. "I'm sorry." Leo knew his mother wasn't perfect, but he also knew that no matter her words, she loved both him and his father. But she had been right. Leo couldn't take care of her. But that tingly feeling had never gone away. He sucked in a deep breath and placed a hand on his father's lifeless chest. His hand began to glow a greenish-yellow hue. This was not the power of the goddess Luminous. This was something else. Something not quite good, but not quite bad. It felt as if he was being drained of his own life. But this was the usual feeling a cleric would have. They used their own magic to heal people. But Leo didn't have enough to live through this, at least not for long. He would find that out much later, however. Leo wasn't sure when it happened. It was on one of the hottest days of summer, but he could never remember the date. It was years after the first strange incident with the guards. Of course, that one incident hadn't been the last. There had been more. So much more. Leo was able to protect his family, though. For once, he could do something. That one fateful day, when that voice had asked him if he wanted power. It had never gone away, but the moment it did, all his power disappeared. That was the moment Leo knew. He would have been better off saying no. Leo collapsed to the ground on his way back from guiding the sheep to their pens. His father had run out, on crutches now, yelling and asking what was wrong. Marcy had joined him, worried for her son and his well-being. Leo would never forget how white her face had been when she felt his temple. He was 20 now, and he was bedridden through his 20th birthday. It had been a sad birthday for sure, because he didn't get better. In fact, day by day, no matter what Nick or Marcy did, their son continued to grow more and more ill. And the sicker he got, the more things started to change. His parents locked his door when the guards came. Without their son to protect them, they took the beatings they received, and all Leo could do was cry and listen. He'd pray desperately to the goddess he had been training under, and a few times it really did feel like he was getting better, like maybe he'd make it. But then, she was gone. He couldn't explain it, but Luminous, when he had started to try and be a cleric under her name, she had given him this fuzzy warm feeling, this reassurance that she would take care of him, even if it took a while, that things would be okay. But he didn't feel that anymore. Had she left him? Did she believe him to be a lost cause? because she couldn't be dead. You can't kill an immortal being.
Yes, you can.
That voice hissed in his mind. And then, Leo Owens was gone.